This is Fam Electric Ghost. We're live on the air with Bonnie Clevering. You're the creative force behind iconic Hollywood hair. And I want to welcome you to the Fam Electric Ghost podcast for the first time. How you doing tonight?
Oh, great. Thanks for having me, Phantom. It's my pleasure.
Well, it's great because we're going to talk about your whole, you've had a 5 decade career in motion pictures as a hairstylist. And we just kind of mention people like A-listers, like Hilary Swank, Bette Davis, Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, Al Pacino, Kristen Stewart, like many, many more iconic films and TV series, like Twilight Saga for people, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, many, many more. Like you go over 120 projects. So then hundreds of actors. So that's a lot of stories to tell.
They're all good and fun.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I love in the creative space of being in Hollywood, being in this industry around all these writers, actors, directors, everybody that's involved with a movie. It must
Hmm.
be really interesting because that's the I always want to know how people make the pie. How they bake the
Right.
cake. What is it that happens? And you're in the detail, like you're shaping the image of an actor through their hair.
Right. Right. And I think because, my son and I wrote a book called Continuity, and it takes in both continuity in film and also in our lives. But the main thing in continuity in film, it's like if Julia Roberts is out in the rain and we're filming and that hair has to keep matching, I take back then I took Polaroid pictures, then we went up to 35 millimeter. And then what I do, I take a front, a right, left, and back of the hair. So I have 4 photos of that
Mhm.
particular scene number. And then it might be 2 months later or a week later, we might have her walking in the door in the interior of the house or wherever it is. And so that hair has to match. So
Match.
that's why I have thousands and thousands of continuity pictures over the last 120 films or TV shows I've worked on.
So that's why it's a pictorial memoir because you're
Yes,
actually using all that content that you had from actually working.
right. And I've got like over 700 pictures in my book.
Wow, that's
And
really
yeah, and all the continuity pictures that I took. Plus, I have many, many more.
that's like 'cause I like making the sausage, like doing the work. 'Cause I like to know the behind the scenes, like in everything. And music, I want to know, like David Bowie's talking about his process, or Bob Dylan talking about his process. And I always want to know, is like, what made you want to do this? What were you thinking about? What were you're working with the recording engineer, and like, why did you do that? Why did you pull this out? Why did you add that? Why did you use a microphone like this? So it like in terms of like you're trying to keep the continuity between the scenes, and they're not always in sequential order, right? These directors do things
Right.
that
Oh,
not
yeah.
in sequence, so that must be
Yeah.
hard.
Well, and when I filmed with Kristen Stewart, the Twilight's, the Breaking Dawn 2 segments, we filmed both scripts. So at the same time. So, for instance, if we were in one location,
Hmm.
we did one script and then we did the next script to save that location and or whatever.
Hmm.
So that was one of the most complicated ones. I've never done that before, where we filmed 2 films at the same
Yeah,
time.
because they've got like they've got their this whole series of films, and I guess they're trying to the production people are like, hey, let's be smart about our time and our be efficient. So I guess they start
Right.
making things overly complicated.
Right. Well, and it's almost like the continuity of a prop a guy that the actor has a cigarette, and there's much ash at the end of that cigarette. But
Yeah.
they might take 10 takes. So he's got them lined up where they've got a light at just a certain time. So every time that guy's talking and smoking,
Yeah, sync up.
that,
There's so many
that
little details that have to sync up
oh
because, like,
yeah,
you could have, if you're using lighting and indoor lighting, you can control things. If you're outdoor and then
it's a
suddenly
whole
yeah, you
yeah.
gotta go, oh, you might gotta fix that with some kind of technical thing today. Could people got CGI, they go, all this computer stuff. Or are you actually gonna try to make it analog, like actually do it with a real sunlight? the real
Right.
situation or
Right. Oh, and it could be the wardrobe department having rain or snow or something on their coat and then retake, and that's got to be exactly the same. Or
not.
either when they walk into it, are those drops going to drop the same way?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then hair is like so much like, makeup is a whole thing, but hair in terms of like when you're trying to work with the actor and work with the directors and the writers, how much leeway do you have? And have there been directors or people who are very specific and say, no, no, I want this, or do they leave more to you?
I would say to begin with, usually the actor pretty much knows what look they want for that particular character. And then it's discussed with the director and producer and myself. And then what's feasible after reading the script? Well, we're going to be on top of that mountain and there's going to be wind and that hair is going to be blowing in her face if it's not just angled, right.
Hmm.
So, we have discussions like that. But I would say as a whole, the actor has been working on that script and studying it and knows pretty much what they want. And especially like Hilary Swank is just one of the best ever. Well, of course, she has 2 Oscars. But when we were going through prepping, and she said, I want a French twist at this scene because when I turned, the camera's good. She already knew where the camera was going to be. We hadn't shot it. But she wanted her French twist to go a certain way where you can do them either way. You can do
Hmm.
that back. And so she knew. And so I just followed the instructions.
That's interesting. So a lot of the actors pretty much define the look, and you haven't run into people kind of trying to redefine it.
Right, and then sometimes during makeup and hair and wardrobe tests, couple weeks before, they I'll bring in different wigs or no different hairstyles that I've discussed with the actor. So we might have even 2 days of testing. So I'll do the hair up, down, half and half, with a hat, with a scarf or a ponytail, and then we go in the screening room the next day and look at all the dailies of those screeners and see. Yep, I think it will look better with her hair up, or I think it will look better with her hair down.
Is it harder
So,
to work with men or women actors?
oh,
It depends on the
not
actor's
that.
personality.
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult challenges I had, but it all worked out fine, was when I first worked with Tim Allen, which I did many things, and he's a very close friend of mine and his wife. But they, I did the Santa Claus 2 with him. And I had never worked with major prosthetics where, the face, when he was heavier Santa Claus,
Oh.
the face is the rubber.
Mhm.
And so I had wigs, like the Santa Claus wig, that had they were made with this fine, fine lace. So the lace lays on the skin or on the prosthetic. And a certain type of glue, you have to glue that so it looks like it's just right part of the skin. So that was one of the most challenging, but yet interesting, for me to do.
That's interesting. Yeah, people are wearing like the prosthetics and like for like fantasy films or films that require people to go into like roles. Eddie Murphy is famous for all these kind of characters he creates with a lot of those prosthetics. And if in certain films require changes like to age somebody or to make them
Hmm.
younger, and then you've got to actually have that continuity of like, okay, how does this person age?
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Through the movie, like, usually in a movie, you'll see a lifetime or life cycle of the character.
Right. Right. Well, and I did Brad Pitt and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And before he did that, he had been filming Troy. So
Mhm.
he had the braids and the dreads and the longer pieces and yeah, all this going on. So I had put together a whole catalog of picture book, because I knew Brad, practically every film he had a different look. So I'm looking at all his past films, what he had never had, or some ideas that I thought would be good for the character. So I've got this whole little scrapbook together, and 2 weeks before we're going to do makeup and hair tests, he comes in the makeup trailer and he had a buzz cut. He was so anxious to get all that hair off. The night before, he went to Jennifer, because he's with Jennifer at the time, and so he went to her hairdresser, and he just buzzed the hair right off.
Oh,
And he knew I would be shocked, and my eyes, I tried to be calm about it. I said, "Oh, Brad," and he looked at me. He said, "Yeah, but I think it's kind of cool." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "But how fast does hair grow?" And I said, "An average of a half an inch a month. And we're going to film in 2 weeks. So most you're going to get is a quarter of an inch."
so it's all wigs. Yeah, I guess you had to work with
No,
wigs then?
no, 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 no. We just used his crew cut
Or
through
you
the whole
decided to
thing.
use that for the character?
So that was an easy job for me. I mean, I kept it trim, the sideburns and the neck, and so he hardly had any time with me, where usually, we figure 15, 30 minutes with the hair.
Mhm.
So I used to give him massages and hot towels on his head and stuff, because I didn't have much to do.
So I guess going back to the beginning, like, how did you get your first job in Hollywood, and was it working with hair?
Yeah, my husband and I were married in Florida, and I worked at a beauty salon, and we had no ties or anything. So we decided to move to California. We just get in the car, put everything we've got. 2 days after we're married, and small family wedding, and we went Route 66 all the way to California. And I knew I would have to get a California hairstyling license. So I knew before I could work in a salon. So anyway, we get there, and after a while, well, I got my license, but then we were living in an apartment complex that had a lot of studio people, grips, electric, assistant directors, whatever. And so this one gentleman said, "You ought to try to get in, the film business." And I thought, yeah, every hairdresser's dream. So he was working on the Beverly Hillbillies in Petticoat Junction.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "You're going to come to the studio and have lunch with Carmen DeRigo, the hairdresser. I want her to meet you." So I went one day, and after we had a wonderful visit, lunch, and afterwards she gets on the phone and she calls the head hairdresser at 20th Century Fox and says, "I just met a girl I think could be a real asset to our business." And then at the time, they were looking for more hairdressers, because the union back then consisted of only female hairdressers and only male makeup artists.
Mm.
And so they were short of hairdressers, but all the seniority girls would have to work before any of us. But it gave us a chance to start putting our hours in and getting the point of being able to take this crucial 2-night test that I had to take. But I just learned, like, at the beginning, I just did extras. Like, we'd be in a big sound stage with hundreds of extras, Hello Dolly, or
Oh,
y-
wow.
um, all kinds of period films. But I would always place myself next to the oldest looking hairdresser, because I felt I could learn from her. And
Like an apprentice
yeah,
situation?
yeah. And so little by little, that's how it all started. And then I worked on a few things, and then I start working at MGM. And Mary Keats, the head hairdresser there, really took a liking to me, and so she put me on the series The Girl from Uncle with Stephanie
Oh,
Powers.
I love that show.
And Stephanie and I still exchange Christmas cards to this day. But and then later I helped out a couple times when she needed someone on her show with Robert Wagner.
Oh yeah,
But
that was a good show too.
yeah.
Heart to
But
Heart,
anyway,
right?
Heart to Heart.
Yeah.
But so I did Stephanie, and then I was married. Keith sent me over to start working on Speedway, the Elvis Presley movie with Nancy
Wow.
Sinatra.
How was
And
that? How was meeting
oh,
Elvis and Nancy Sinatra?
oh, it was great, great. She is a doll, and Elvis was so nice and kind. But back then, only male makeup artists and only female hairdressers. And the male makeup artists also did the male's hair.
Mm.
And then the hairdresser did the woman's hair. But we would touch up or on set, if we needed to, we'd watch the man's hair too. But working with Elvis was just a dream. He was so fun and kind, and I pulled some cranks on him because his buddies were always around, and the colonel was always around, and they'd always be pulling some kind of crank. And whenever someone would come up to Elvis, I mean, he just kind of turned like, like
So it
he
was
was
gonna
like,
happen.
what? Yeah, what's happening next? So I pulled a couple good cranks on him.
That must be really it's so cool to be around such a big name and then really
Oh,
see how they are. Like, even though they're acting, I
oh,
mean, you get to see you get this, get behind the scenes and like, wow, you get a
yeah,
different perspective, right?
and then being with Nancy Sinatra, then I did some musical specials and that with her and her father and Dean, which was nice. And then when I was working with Elvis, Nancy gave Priscilla Presley a baby shower
Oh,
and
wow.
invited me. And it was at Nancy's house, and there maybe 12, 15 women the most there. And I had an infertility problem and could not get pregnant, or I kept miscarrying. So halfway through the shower, Nancy had Priscilla and I stand up. I thought, what is she doing? And she said, it's an old Italian wives' tale to rub your hands on the pregnant woman's stomach, and that's supposed to bring you luck. That was the month I got pregnant with my son, Jason.
It worked.
Yeah, it did. And when I found out, I took up because Nancy liked yellow daisies, and I took a big basket of yellow daisies and I knocked at her door. And she said, I know what happened to you.
That's so cool to be
Oh,
around, like, especially that's a really, like, historic time when you had, like, those kind of people. It's like on the stage,
oh,
these titans of like music and art and film. It's like you're around this thing between the television and the movies, being in that era.
oh,
Is that you would
absolutely.
call it like a classic Hollywood period?
Yes, because, well, in fact, I'll just go back 1 second, but I have in my book a picture of the little thank you note, return address Memphis, and it said in it, Elvis and I want to thank you for, and so there's a picture of it in my book of the
Oh,
thank
wow,
you note, which I treasure. And
super awesome like that.
but when I started, it was that old Hollywood. It was like you'd break for lunch for an hour and you'd go to the commissary, which the tables had tablecloths, linen napkins, and all the actors ate there. I mean, today it's, catering trucks, and we
Mm,
grab a paper plate and go in a trailer or something. But it was just such a class act. And I
Memoir.
remember even seeing Rock Hudson there, and one day I thought, what's all the commotion? And Joan Crawford was coming back because that's who she had been with, was MGM. And they had over the whole entryway, there's a big arch. Welcome home, Joan.
Oh, wow.
And for some reason, she went in the sound stage to get some, I don't know what it was, some recognition award or whatever. But they had a red carpet going up to the stage with these big flower arrangements on each side of the stage door. And then all the way through the stage, they had a red carpet that she walked on until she did whatever she was there to do. And, you know, and I mean, the producers would come down, we call them the suits, because they had suits and ties, and
Mhm.
we wore dresses.
And more
We
formal,
never.
I guess.
Oh, yeah, and the makeup men wore, shirts, with a tie, uh, and when I went back in the business years later, I I just couldn't believe how things had changed so casually.
Everything gone casual. Like, did
Yeah.
was that something that kinda started happening in the '70s, or was like more like a '90s, 2000 thing?
No, when I got back into the business, 'cause I left for a while, my husband and I and the 2 kids came to Indiana, with his job, and I wasn't gonna work anyway because I didn't wanna be a working mom. But then when we went and we moved to Dallas for my husband's work, that's when I saw it was like 1982, 83.
Mhm.
That's when I saw the big change
Big change and
in
not
the
being as formal
mhm,
as like the '60s
right.
or the '50s, like
And women were doing the makeup then, and, uh, and the men were doing the men's hair. It's so there was, quite a switch and change then.
wow. So in terms of, that most challenging set of all after all the years you've been working, like what decade or multiple decades where you had a challenging situation?
Well, I don't know if I had challenging because it just changed so, but I know even when I did period pieces in the 80s or 90s or whatever, um, I loved doing the 60s hairdos.
Mhm.
I love that era. I love doing the hair, and it was like molding the hair. It was a just, blow out and let
Take a
it
look. Yeah,
fly in
so
the air, whatever.
yeah, there's something about that, you go back and look at, like, Man from U.N.C.L.E., you look at these older TV shows or even the movies from the
Yeah,
period, either Hitchcock movies or any of the great films, and I guess the question I have, like, how much black and white work did you how much color work did you do?
I did almost all color.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty much all color. I'm trying to think of. I've got a wall filled with 8 by 10 signed for me, and I'm looking around now to see even some of the old stuff, but pretty much
Good luck,
color.
because I know Man
Hmm.
from U.N.C.L.E., I mean, I would have a collection and, like, it first started in black and white, and then it went to color.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I'm probably 1965, 6. Yeah, we
Mhm.
were still doing some black and whites. But then in the 70s is when I left. And then when I came back in the 80s, then
It's
it
all
was
color,
all
yeah.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm just wondering, I've talked to some film directors and they like that idea when you have shadows in black and white, there's a whole thing with the shadow and the lighting that you can do. I'm wondering, like, with the hair in a black and white setting versus a color setting, what's the dynamic in terms of what you're looking for? But if you didn't really
Mm.
work on that,
No, and the film has even changed, so which is the technical end that I don't know that much about,
mhm.
but I know it's changed quite a
Yeah,
bit.
from actually going from like real film to digital cameras,
Right.
like everything is like, do they feel because they can change it on the computer that they don't need to do as much? Because they can always fix it on
Oh
the back
yeah.
end?
Oh yeah. Well, and I remember because even trying to think what year it would have been. When I was called to do Eclipse, I didn't do New Moon or Twilight, but I did Eclipse and the Two Breaking Dawns with Kristen Stewart. But I had gotten a call. They'd already start filming Eclipse up in Vancouver. And the year before, Kristen had told the producers of the Twilight series that she was going to do the Joan Jett story, and she was going to cut her hair and dye it black because with all the movements and that she didn't want a wig. So
Mhm.
they knew she was going to have to wear a wig in Eclipse. So they had a beautiful hair lace wig made for her, but it just wasn't working. They'd been filming for a couple weeks. And so I got a call from the producer, and he said, Bonnie, we're having trouble with this wig. Now, when I got the call, they said it's the Twilight series. Oh, did they bring the Twilight Zone
There's no
back?
back.
I knew nothing
That's what Twilight,
about
yeah.
it. Yeah, and my kids were uh
Must have been
they
freaking
were
out.
it they were too young and whatever. So anyway, they said he said, "I like you to come up." And because I'd worked with this producer before, and he said, "I think you could help us because uh, the LA film people, the producers, are not real happy what this looks like." So I said, "Well, first of all, you you have to let the department know that I'm coming because I don't want the hairdressers there think, oh, well, they had to bring someone else in,
Oh,
da
the
da da."
politics of it and, like, wait,
Right.
you're gonna run into a problem.
So I said, "You call me back." So he calls me back. He said, "Oh, they are so excited because I had worked with Al Pacino in a movie up there before, and so I knew the whole department. And
When they
so
knew
I don't
you.
know if they said they loved me, but yet maybe because I was getting it off their butt too, that they didn't have to deal with the wig. So anyway, I went up and I spent almost 2 days in the producer's trailer looking at all the dailies and everything they had filmed so far, and what scenes I felt that just we needed to do
To
something
reshoot
different.
them with
Yeah,
this, yeah.
yeah. So, I made adjustments on that wig and then had another wig made, and then it all, worked out. So that's where I kind of, Kristen and I just fell in love with each other, and I did the next two, and then I did in London the Snow White and the Huntsman with her.
Wow. It just seems that so a lot of people might not realize how much work goes into, like, you're looking at the dailies, like, you're taking photos, like you were saying with the Polaroids. Um, there's a lot of detailed work that people don't see, right? They see the final
Right.
product, and then, like, talking about, like, how did you come up with, like, learned about, like, how to actually analyze the film? I mean, how to actually look at the dailies. Did people show you, like, the people you had apprenticed with, kinda show you what they had done and you learned it over time?
Well, years ago, we never looked at the dailies.
Mm,
And years ago, we never really changed the hairdos that much. Like when I did Stephanie and the girl from Uncle, I don't know if we had maybe a couple changes, but practically nothing.
mhm,
And we just didn't. I mean, and if you look back at the old timers, like I did Betty Davis for one day at MGM, and well, we know what a brilliant actress she is. She was just so into reading her script and into it. It was like get my hair, get my makeup done, and yeah, that looks great, and so on. But I found years later, so many of the girls, even some of the men, but they want, well, now this scene is this way, so I think I'd like to have my hair up. This scene's this way. Uh, let's do it where my hair's half wet, whatever. So it just changed
got
so
more
much.
detailed. They got more like,
Yeah,
they wanna be more precise about,
yeah,
like, all these moments where, like you're saying in
right,
the past, they were like, "Well, I'm gonna do it with my acting."
right, right. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, they still want to look beautiful, even if they're running through the woods.
Yeah. But I can see it, like, but maybe because they got so into maybe being able to look at the images easier, maybe it's with the
Hmm.
tech of, actors going back and looking at the dailies and people going back and reviewing things and having it more people looking at it. Then you go, "Oh, do you get too many cooks in the kitchen?"
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And because I mean, there's so darn many producers anymore on a film too. It's not just one or two like it was years ago.
Yeah, so then you got, like, is it like a committee decision? Then now
Yeah,
you have to go into a meeting and then have a meeting
yeah,
about that meeting and a meeting about that meeting to go over what you wanna do.
r- exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's always fun. Like, 'cause if you like, as an artist, a lot of times it's like, I just wanna get to the art, right?
Y-
I want to get,
Yeah, yeah,
and then if I had to go through all these things, like, do I have to care about like the 15 seconds before I walk through this door, and then the 30 minutes after I sit down on the bed, I'm gonna look different. I'm not gonna care about. So I'm gonna make that. You can start getting so into all the details. It's like,
yeah.
is
And I
that
think
too much?
what, yeah, and I think one of the most difficult I ever had to do. I was doing a film with Julia Roberts, I think it was America's Sweethearts. And we filmed it. She used her own hair, different styles in the film. And a month or two later, I get a call and said, we have to reshoot or we have to add something to one of the scenes. But Julia's hair now is a different color, different length, and she, of course, doesn't want to cut it or color it or whatever. So we're going to have you have a wig made to match those scenes,
Mhm.
that one scene. And and I said, well, how close are you going to be? And they said, it's a close up.
It was a
It
big,
is so
it's
close.
big.
Yeah. Big screen. It wasn't television. Big screen. And so I had a wig made, and then I had to cut it and trim it and do this and that to it. And it was so tedious. And so I said, how long of a cut do we have? Like, is it going from who she's talking to, then to her, then back to her, or, whatever?
Mhm.
And they said, it's a, like a second. So it was like they were using part and then the new part too.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, it was like that.
Just that.
No, no one, I know, I'm 100% positive no one would ever know, but oh, I'd never want to look at that film again.
That's a lot of work for such a small amount of time.
Oh, it was just, I mean, so precise.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
I guess that's what they want. If you get somebody that really is that detail and that, like, micro level.
Well, and then they know it's on a gigantic screen.
Yeah.
It's I mean, for instance, if you and I were doing this and in 6 months you said, Bonnie, that one part about that one um story you told me. And I'd have to think, well, first of all, we didn't take any continuity pictures of me, but
Yeah,
you
so
could send me a clip or something. But I mean, it would have to be
yeah.
exact.
Yeah, that's interesting 'cause that's so
Yeah.
tight. It's very, like, yeah, exact, yeah, it's like exact kind of science type of thing, but it's art. But,
Hmm.
that's always interesting in terms of, like, when you're working on wigs, like, do you have a set group of, like, people who produce the wigs for you? Are you responsible
Well,
for that, or does the production company already have wig makers?
oh, we pick, or a lot of times if the actor has worn wigs before, they even know wig makers. But I had my favorites, and back, oh, even in the 80s, there weren't that many. Now there's several wig makers, and the art really came from Europe, and it's just takes a certain type of person to make one of those wigs because it's uh, first of all, I would meet with the wig maker and the actor, and then I would wrap her head and her hair all down so it'd be as flat and close to her scalp. So it'd be
Mhm.
the size of her scalp. And then with the after I put it all everything in it and wrapped it up and everything, then they would take a cast mold of uh of their head. So then they had the exact shape of her head,
So it totally,
and
like,
then
fits the
they
body.
would use that as the base to start making the wig. First the wig cap, then it's almost like a little fine crochet hook. They'd hand tied and hook every hair on that netting. And then we would have a couple fittings and check everything and another fitting and that. So it was, and back in the, oh, I would say the 80s, Yeah, probably the 80s. They were about $3,000 to have one made.
Wow.
And I'd always have 2 just in case something would happen. Or
Mhm.
they would shoot one scene and we had the hair in a different style that and they want to switch real quick.
Oh,
But nowadays, I don't think you can get one much under probably 10 to $15,000. I mean,
wow.
they're beautiful, beautiful hair.
And there's
You'd never
handmade,
know.
so it's handmade and very individual, tied to the actor, like
Yeah,
body, head, shape and who they
yeah,
are.
yeah. And the hair is just beautiful, beautiful.
Wow, that's really interesting in terms of, like, who are the favorite your favorite people to work with in terms of directors?
Oh, well, I love Oliver Stone. Just love him. He's just so brilliant. And I did Born on the 4th of July, JFK, Any Given Sunday. Yeah, and I sent him my book a couple months ago. He immediately texted me back and just thought it was brilliant. He was very pleased with it. And yeah, one of my favorite pictures in the book is he and I talking to each other across the table. It was just he's just great. And then I did a lot of Steven Soderbergh movies,
Hmm,
and he, the thing with Steven, his whole crew, he kept having film after film after film, which Oliver did a lot too. But Steven just trusted who he had
we
on
kept the
his
same theme,
crew
kept the
and
same
just
theme.
kept, yeah, and just so it wasn't like hardly ever going up to him and saying, "What is this? What is that?" He just trusted whatever our decision was, and with the actor.
Well, that's
And
awesome.
he shot real fast. We didn't do tons of takes. And I think the one that I love, and bless his soul, he's gone, but John Hughes, I did Curly Sue, and
Mhm.
he would take after take
Yeah,
after
it's a different
take.
style. You get these
Oh,
people that are
yeah,
looking for perfection, and you have these other people kind of more like, flow state in the moment. Like,
right.
yeah, but like a jazz fusion guy is like, "Yeah, like, I can live with that note not being what I expected, and I'll kinda evolve to it." Where
Yes,
you have
exactly.
somebody that's like, they got an exact picture in their mind what they want. If they don't get it, they're gonna keep on retaking, redoing it until they get it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was in Chicago on that film. I was there 3 months. I saw fall, winter, and early spring. That's how long it took to film it, but he was great. He was great. And, Christopher Nolan, who,
Mhm. Nolan
he's fabulous.
is
That's what I did, with Pacino. That was the first time I worked with Al Pacino in an on Insomnia. We did that
mhm.
in Canada, and, and to watch Al work was like so often they'd say, "Okay, get ready. We got to go to the set." So then we know we're going to set probably till lunchtime. And Al was the one that I loved going and watch.
You like the
I
way his
just,
style, the way he
oh
the way
yeah,
he did it? There was
yeah.
something about it?
He's so good. And another one that I feel is like the young Al Pacino is Edward Norton.
Oh, no, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I did a couple with him, and Edward was just, I mean, he knew. I mean, he's one of the men that he knew during the prep time how he wanted his hair.
He
And then
actually
we
knew what
try
he
a couple
wanted.
of different things. Yeah, because he knew what he's going to wear and how he's going to this and that. And he is so smart.
So what about Al did you really like? Is it that his delivery or the way he carried himself or how he executed, like, the lines is, like, just, like, the way he presented himself?
Almost everything. He was a little superstitious. Yeah, he would never walk over a cable on the sound stage. He'd walk all the way around the stage before he'd walk over a cable.
Wow.
And then I would fix his hair, and then one day I realized what he was doing. He said, "We're just ready to roll." And he said, "Bonnie," I thought, well, I better go. and what could have gone wrong at that short of time? So I went up to him. He just said, "How does it look?" I said, "Great, Al." And he said, "Okay." He had this thing, if he kind of touched me, it was like good luck or something.
So,
And
yeah, he needed that.
yeah, 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 he's a great guy. Well, we know how great Al is.
Oh, yeah. That's so amazing, the films you worked on. What TV shows did in terms of television versus movies, were there TV, projects that you really, I guess, like, loved or as much as a movie? Or you would never really love a TV show as much as a movie project?
Well, I only really did the whole series, The Girl from Uncle. Others I would just fill in, or if they needed an extra hairdresser, or oh, I remember one time I was just hired for one day because they were casting what woman they were going to use on Green Acres as his wife.
Mhm.
So, I show up, I do these three actors' hair, and then, shoot it. And then that night I come home, I told my husband, I said, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "This is going to be interesting." And the one that, end up getting the role, the Gabor
Yeah.
girl, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, she got it, and I didn't think, but I mean, it worked out,
That's
fine.
interesting.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
movies are more like you're able to be on it more long term, because TV shows were more like kind of here, like you're not on it like like as much time spent.
Well, month-wise, it's probably a little longer. I mean, back then
Hmm.
than an actual movie. I mean, it just kind of depended if it was a comedy or what. But the creativity on a film, is much more.
More depth. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's all these characters. Because sometimes when I didn't do just one actor, I'd run the whole department. Then I'd have hairdressers under me, like I'd have an assistant, but then we'd have to work out a schedule because next Tuesday there's going to be 50 extras, but in 3 weeks we're going to have 150 extras. And if
Yeah.
it's a period, and so like I'd have to hire extra hairdressers to fill in the tent or the gymnasium, wherever they're going to do all these extras. And a lot of times, like Born on the Fourth of July and some of those films, the extras would come in a week or two in advance, and they would get fitted for their period outfit. And that's when we would have pictures and poster boards of what the hair looked like during that period.
Mm.
And then I'd have a hairdresser there that like perhaps would cut all the men's hair in advance, so they didn't have to do all those haircuts the day of shooting. And then the women, we we told them, different things to do the night before, so they'd have their hair curled, and then we could, form it into whatever that period was.
That's really interesting because it's just like the level of effort that you have to put in. Because the scale, like, movies have this, like, massive, you have a lot bigger budget than I would think TV shows have. So you have, like, you get like, you had that department because it's a movie, it's a way larger scale, right?
Right, right. Well, and the TV shows, they don't have that many, the crowds,
Mm,
like the Board on the Fourth of July, for instance. We had a fella that worked in Vietnam cutting hair in the service. And I mean, he was in the service, but that was his thing to do.
mhm.
And so we did this in Dallas, and I don't know who found this guy, but it was amazing because he just knew that haircut.
You knew what
He
it
could
was.
w-
He had the
he
real
whipped
cut.
those extras out with that, and he had a hose on the end of his clipper that had a something that the hose went down into this box. So every when he was cutting hair, it would go into this box. There's no hair on the floor.
Oh, wow, he just
And
had a system he
yeah,
worked out.
yeah. And then I found two local hairdressers, these two guys that used to do in the 60s the prom queen and her court at the SMU University in Dallas.
Oh, wow.
And these were those kind of hairstyles. And those two guys could whip out the most gorgeous 60 hairdos. So, I would hunt for them. And then when some of the extras in the background, I got Sears catalogs from those periods
Oh, so you could
because
see
the catalogs, it showed the clothes, everything, but it showed children's hair, men,
the whole family,
teenagers.
yeah, so
Look,
it shows the
yeah.
whole family, yeah.
So it was great looking through those catalogs for the styles of that period.
So, like, so that was a good for that period, that's what you would look for other periods, where did you get your historical information? How did you research things?
Well, I mean, I did for, those catalogs for different periods because those catalogs were quite a while. But and then of course back then we didn't have the internet and
Yeah.
that exposure. And but we had a library that we could that was in Burbank
Oh, and the
that
stream.
we yeah, that it was just for
Yeah.
all departments. And so we could either go and make copies or we could check them out like a library. And
Makes sense.
so that was a good base.
So that whole system must have gone away maybe with all the
Oh
internet,
yeah. Oh
because I
yeah.
know you don't need that, but there was a whole
No.
department, like a physical library, and now that probably doesn't need to be there, but there's something about going to a book compared to going to a screen. I like
Oh
I
yeah. Oh
like
yeah.
physically looking at something versus
Sure.
digitally looking at it. That must be
Yeah. No,
different.
absolutely.
So in terms of, like the period, like you said, when you got to the 80s, like the dress down period, and it wasn't as formal, didn't have the kinda height of the Hollywood kinda grandeur. Did it,
Right.
like, change how people worked because of that? Less like more people were casual? Did it change, like, the structure of the work?
No. 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 And I think just more and more people are getting into the business, and I think they just worked almost harder
Oh,
because they knew how difficult it was to get into the business. So I think the talent, I mean, the things people do nowadays with the
mhm.
hair, especially the makeup artists with all the prosthetics and all the different films that are being done today. I mean, they've got to be on top of their game.
Yeah, just weren't because like, it's like I'm in software design, and there was a period where it was like IBM and we're wearing suits and ties, like back when it
Hmm.
first started, like in the 90s. We go into the software place, everybody's wearing suit tie. Now
Sure.
everybody's wearing sweatshirts.
Oh,
But we still are talented, but we just don't have to worry about our appearance as much.
yeah. Well, and I didn't even know they had caterers in the 80s. And the first day I got a call in Dallas to go to work the next day, uh, I said to my husband, I said, I, don't, I better pack a lunch because I don't know what they do at lunchtime. And so I get to work, I go ahead and do who I have to do, and I go to the set. It was in a school. So we're in the schoolroom, watching the hair, take after take. And I go out in the hall and I see these long tables of potato chips and popcorn and coffee and cokes and fruit. And I thought, oh, what a nice lunch. And never said a thing to anyone because I had hid my bag, my lunch bag. And then about an hour and a half later, lunch. I thought, what is it? They said, oh, we go out to the truck. Well, here's this truck with either chicken, fish, or beef, plus all the salads. You've seen what these
Yeah,
caterer
yeah,
trucks do.
yeah, they have.
And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe this." And they had and then it was like I didn't have that much equipment, but the people that had been on many films there, and the makeup artist has really got a hold of me because there was a hairdresser that had worked with him for years, but he was leaving the business. So it was perfect timing. He was looking for a hairdresser to do all these little movie of the weeks and films in Dallas. And so at the end of the week, I get my paycheck, and I said, "Oh, what is this $25?" And he said, "Box rental." I said, "Well, what do you mean by box rental?" And he said, "Because of the equipment you bring, they pay you." And I said, "$25 a week, that's great." He said, "No, it's $25 a day." And and the thing is that they supplied the hairspray and products and that, but because my clippers and my scissors and my combs and my brushes, they paid me $25 a day. And I thought, this is unbelievable because I think my checks, I might have made a couple $100 a week when I was working in the 60s at
Mhm.
MGM.
Yeah, but it's like the
Yeah.
money changed, like, in terms of what the value
Oh,
is.
yeah. Well, look at our rent and our
Yeah,
taxes and everything.
taxes now, everything's like, yeah, you gotta get paid.
You gotta. Yep.
So in terms of your book, like, what made you wanna take all this history and all the artifacts you have and present it as a book?
Well, I was filming with Kristen that in London. My son at the time lived in Barcelona. And so he came over to London and he said, "Mom, you've mentioned a few times, maybe we ought to start, you know, working on your book." And I said, "Well, but who's going to read it?" And, I'm a hairdresser. So anyway, I'd go to work like 5, 6 in the morning, and Jason stayed with me for a couple weeks, and he'd get up early all day long, put down notes, write, and then come home in the evening, and then we'd sit for a couple hours and go over what he wrote. So we did that for a while. Then he took it back to Barcelona and start writing. And then I don't know, it just kind of died at that time. So a couple years ago, Jason was living in Austin, Texas, and his lease was up in his townhouse. And everything so many people do nowadays is by the internet anyway. And I said, I've got the room upstairs and everything. And I said, why don't you come and we get back on my book? So that's how we did it. And he wanted to portray not just a Hollywood book. It's a book about the continuity of life also. So
Mhm.
it's like Continuity by Bonnie Clevery, Life Beyond the Credits. And so it takes in, just my life and how my desire was to do this and that, but what didn't take me there. Uh and I lost my husband when he was just 55 years old. And we didn't we were never wealthy people or had big homes or anything. We had nice lives, but and so after he had passed and we were in LA, that's when we went back to LA. And and so finally, when after he passed, I thought, well, I've got to really get going and make money and put time in my union so I can work on a retirement and insurance and everything. And fortunately, I was doing a few things, and then all of a sudden, I start working with Steven Soderbergh, and Steven he kind of had his own crew, kind of like Oliver did.
Mhm.
So we knew we were going to do this film, then we're going to do the next one, and then I was working on Out of Sight with Jennifer Lopez and George Clooney, and then all of a sudden we were going to be doing Aaron Brockovich in, I think it was like 6 months, 4 months from then. And someone said want you on the phone. Well, that's when we had stage phones. And so this woman said, I was wondering who did Jennifer Lopez on Out of Sight. And I said, I did. And I said, why are you asking? And she said, well, my client wanted to know. And I said, do you mind if I ask you who your client is? And she said, Julia Roberts.
Oh, wow.
And I said, "Oh." So I think what it was, and that's what so many women did in Hollywood. They they'd see this actor, after so many films, they like her look, and
They
maybe
want
they're
to find out who did it.
tired of their hairdresser, or their hairdresser isn't available. And so I went from running the department to just doing Julia,
Wow.
and we just hit it off. I did many, many after that, and she's just a doll to work
So
with.
you'd be able to get, like, into a situation where you had a constant workflow that you're
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
you've got some you big names like Julia Roberts actually liking your work, and so that must keep you in the game because if you're working with
Right.
such a high level person, then other people are gonna want you
Oh,
too. Because you
yeah.
say, "Hey, you did Julia, well, can you do me? Can you do this?" Is that how
Yeah.
it happens? Like a Rolodex of, like, you can name check this person, and they're gonna get a steady stream of work.
Yeah, and that's what happened, with Jennifer Lope doing her, and then, doing Julia, and then, well, when I was doing, Pacino, that's when, Hilary Swank was in Insomnia, and we just hit it off just as friends.
Mhm.
And then that's when she started asking for me also.
That's cool. That's a good thing to have. I mean, when you get these
Uh,
big A-listers are asking for you by name,
yeah.
that's
Well,
what
and
you
I
want.
think, too, they have to get that trust,
Yeah.
and in the people that are working the closest to them. And so, you know, evidently, in like my book is nothing to do with anything negative at
Mm,
all. And like I
mhm.
said, it's about my life too, how I
It's your memoir,
tried
right?
to keep a balance of being a wife, and raising two kids at grade school and teenage years, and working, and then losing my husband and working, and and I was raised in just a normal family that didn't have very much money, so I worked from the time I can remember, making 50 cents an hour. And things like how I was raped as a teenager, and then my husband was a working alcoholic, and he died of cirrhosis of the liver. And just knowing that when you live with someone that's a drinker. And so it's just how I overcame some of this stuff. And then also, I think the relationships, I love to cook. I've always loved to cook. And it's amazing how I found out how each of my actors love to cook. And when I did Hilary Swank, and we were in Baton Rouge for 3 months, and she said, I want you to stay in the guest house because while we're here, I want you to teach me how to bake every kind of pie. I said, okay. And then we had someone teach us how to quilt. So every Sunday we had the teacher come in and show us how to quilt. And then Julia is an excellent, excellent cook. And so, and Kristen Stewart, she's as good as they come too. So on days off, or we get done early of a day, we'd get together and have tacos, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever it would be. And like Kristen one Christmas said, I think we should make Christmas cookies for the whole crew. I said, okay, when are we going to do this, Kristen? And she said, well, I've got the house with the big kitchen. I said, no matter how big your house and kitchen is, you only have a double oven.
You know,
So we can only put so many cookies
big
in.
cookies in it.
And there's three of us baking, and you're talking hundreds of cookies. So she said, no, it'll work. I said, okay, well, the weekend we're going to do it. She had company come in. We couldn't do it. So the makeup girl and I decided we're just going to make him in our own apartments, and then she's just going to make him the night before, or whatever she's going to do. So we all know what kind we're making, so we have a variety. And I got these nice big trays, and I thought we'll send a tray to the production office. We'll have a couple of trays on the craft service table on the stage. Well, Kristen says, I want to put them in individual boxes with their names on it. I said, where are we going to get 100 boxes that are cute and that size for that amount of cookies? Well, I go out on the Sunday before, and sure enough, I find them at Pier 1. But then someone's got to put them all together. And then she says, and I want to put their name. I said, well, then you're going to do it because I'm not. Put name on every box.
A lot of
And I mean,
requests.
they so appreciated it. It was, yeah, fun. It really was. So
But I
we
think,
just,
yeah.
the cookie thing.
Well, I think it's that the fact that you're able to have this kind of these like real relationship
Oh,
in terms
yeah.
of like cooking and talking and you know doing the activities you've been talking about, like the knitting, and it just like makes people more like you elevate these stars to such a level where people don't think they could talk to them or touch them or know that they're real
Yeah.
people, and you
They're
got to
real
see them as like
people.
real people. And I think that's really it's enlightening, and that's a cool thing to discuss or have in your memoir is to have that kind of picture of people from that kind of point of view because so many people are into other things. They're like the gossip things,
Oh, yeah.
and the
Yeah.
fact is like, it's about your story, how you
Right.
were able to be here in this environment and work. You're a working person. You did the work. You're an artist, and that's you're a working artist. They got to meet a lot of interesting people.
Yeah. Well, and it was uh, the very first time this cooking started was the first time I met Julia. We were doing makeup and hair tests uh, in preparing her for them in the trailer. I don't even know at the time. I had lived in Austin also at one time. But anyway, she said, "Oh, I love sausage biscuits and gravy." And I said, "Well, I make pretty good. People think my sausage biscuits and gravy are pretty good." So she said, "Well, we'll have to make them sometime." So I made them. She loved them. And it became a thing no matter where we would go. For instance, we're at the Bellagio doing Ocean's 11, and all the actors underneath the parking, they have these little villas with their own little swimming pool and little yard and that, and full kitchen, full dining room. So one after Sunday afternoon, she said, what are we going to eat tonight? And she said, why don't we make the sausage biscuits and gravy? I said, for dinner? I said, I only think of it as a brunch or breakfast. And I said, well, let's order a big fruit tray and a couple things that are going to kind of cut that starch and gravy. And so we're cooking, and the smell is smelling so good. And the door knocks to her villa, and it's Matt Damon. He said, what do we smell in the hall? It smells so good. And he said, we're making sausage, biscuits, and gravy. So all of a sudden, there at the table is Clooney, Matt Damon, Don Cheadle, the guys.
Hmm.
Everyone's eating sausage, biscuits, and gravy. So that has gone down of all the actors I've done. And in the book is my sausage, biscuit, gravy recipe.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I like that you integrated your cooking and the cooking stories too. But
Right, right.
it's just amazing that all the stories you have, and I want to let people know the name of the book again is Continuity with Bonnie
Mhm.
Clevering, Life Beyond the Credits.
This is, this
It's
is the
great stuff.
cover with many names.
And then we've got the link there to your website and your
Yes.
Instagram, and those are going to be fully clickable. We've just been on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick Live. We will be on all the other podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon by tomorrow. And I want to thank you for being a guest on the show today, and hope everybody checks out your book. It's coming out. Is out? Is it out or it's coming out in September?
Yeah, it's out, and it's in fact in the printing for the second printing as we're
Awesome.
talking. So they would be getting it soon if
Oh,
they
great.
order as soon as possible.
I want to thank you again for being here today. And we always encourage people to click on the links and check it out. Go to Amazon, go to a bookstore, go find it, buy it, and support the people we interview. I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you, Phantom, for having me. It was my pleasure.
Thank you.